In Chicago, United States of America, a 40-year-old woman, Astrid Falls, sat in her small apartment, staring blankly at the wall. Her eyes, once bright and full of life, had lost their luster. Her world had been shattered, and her life savings had vanished into thin air. Days after retiring from active service, Astrid had fallen victim to a sophisticated banking hack. Her entire life savings, carefully accumulated over decades, had been siphoned off in a matter of hours. The pain and anguish were overwhelming, and Astrid felt like she'd lost her sense of purpose. As she sat in darkness, a spark ignited within her. She remembered the countless times she'd heard of others falling prey to similar scams and hacks. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Astrid decided to take matters into her own hands and become the voice of the voiceless. With a newfound determination, Astrid embarked on a journey to learn everything she could about traditionally banking hacks and cryptocurrency scams. She spent countless hours studying, researching, and practicing. She devoured books, articles, and online forums, determined to understand the intricacies of the dark web and the tactics employed by cybercriminals. As she delved deeper into the world of cybercrime, Astrid discovered that she had a knack for following the digital trail of money launderers and hackers. She learned to track transactions, identify patterns, and pinpoint the sources of illicit funds. Her skills improved with each passing day, and she began to see the world in a different light. Astrid created a website, the digital Robinhood, where people could share their stories, report scams, and seek help. The website quickly gained popularity, and Astrid found herself inundated with requests for assistance. One of the first cases she took on was that of a young couple, Liam and Isabella, who had lost their entire wedding savings to a cryptocurrency scam. The couple had been buying and hodling well-studied coins for years, and their dreams of a beautiful wedding had been shattered. Astrid took on the case, determined to track down the scammers and recover the stolen funds. With her exceptional skills, Astrid followed the digital trail, tracing the transactions through various cryptocurrency exchanges and wallets. She identified the scammers' modus operandi and pinpointed their location. Within weeks, Astrid had recovered the stolen funds and returned them to the grateful couple. As news of her success spread, more and more people began to reach out to Astrid for help. She took on case after case, using her expertise to track down scammers, recover stolen funds, and bring cybercriminals to justice. Astrid's website became a beacon of hope for those who had lost everything to cybercrime. She worked tirelessly, often for 18 hours a day, to ensure that justice was served. Her online reputation grew, and she became known as the digital Robin Hood, a hero to many. However, Astrid's work didn't go unnoticed by the cybercriminals. They began to take notice of her meddling, and soon she found herself in their crosshairs. Astrid received threatening messages warning her to back off. But she refused to be intimidated. One fateful night, Astrid received a message from an unknown number. The message read, "Meet me at the old warehouse on the outskirts of town at midnight. Come alone." Astrid's instincts told her that this was a trap, but she couldn't resist the urge to confront the person behind the message. Being a black belter, she had nothing to be afraid of. As she arrived at the warehouse, she noticed that the building was abandoned and surrounded by a high fence. She cautiously entered the warehouse, her heart racing with anticipation. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a figure emerged from the shadows. The figure was a woman, dressed in a black hoodie, her face obscured by a mask. "You're the digital Robin Hood," she said, her voice low and menacing. "I've been watching you. You're quite skilled, but you're also a nuisance." Astrid stood her ground, refusing to back down. "I'm just trying to help people," she said, her voice firm. "I won't stop until justice is served." The woman sneered, pulling out a small device from her pocket. "We'll see about that," she said, pressing a button on the device. Suddenly, the warehouse was filled with a blinding light, and Astrid felt a surge of electricity run through her body. She stumbled, disoriented, and fell to the ground. When Astrid came to, she found herself in a dark, damp cell. She had no idea where she was or how she'd gotten there. The only sound was the faint hum of a generator and the soft murmur of voices in the distance. Astrid's head throbbed with pain, and her body felt bruised and battered. She struggled to remember what had happened, but her memories were hazy. As she slowly regained her composure, Astrid realized that she was in some sort of captivity. She was determined to escape. Astrid began to examine her surroundings. The cell was small, with stone walls and a metal door. A faint light flickered from a small bulb in the corner of the room. Astrid spotted a small ventilation shaft in the wall, partially hidden by a rusty grill. Without hesitation, Astrid began to work on the grill, using her bare hands to pry it loose. The metal was rusty and stubborn, but she persisted, driven by her determination to escape. As she worked, Astrid heard the sound of footsteps approaching. The door to her cell creaked open, and a figure loomed in the doorway. It was the woman in the black hoodie, her face still obscured by a mask. "You're quite resourceful, I'll give you that," the woman said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But you'll never escape. This place is designed to keep people like you contained." Astrid glared at the woman, her eyes blazing with defiance. "I'll never give up," she spat. "I'll always find a way." The woman chuckled, a cold, mirthless sound. "We'll see about that," she said, stepping forward. Astrid tensed, ready to defend herself, but the woman simply dropped a small device on the floor, a device that looked eerily familiar. "Recognize this?" the woman asked, her voice taunting. "It's the same device I used to take you down, and now it's going to keep you contained." Astrid's eyes widened as the device emitted a high-pitched whine, filling the room with an intense, pulsating energy. She felt her body begin to weaken, her muscles numb and unresponsive. The woman turned to leave, but not before casting a glance of triumph over her shoulder. "You'll never escape," she repeated, her voice echoing in Astrid's mind. As the device continued to emit its debilitating energy, Astrid felt her consciousness begin to slip away. But even as she succumbed to the darkness, she knew that she would never give up. She would always find a way to escape. As Astrid's consciousness faded, she was left with only her thoughts. She thought about her life, her work, and the people she had helped. She thought about the woman in the black hoodie and the device that had taken her down. Days passed, or so Astrid thought. She had no concept of time, locked away in the darkness. But she didn't give up. She used her time to reflect, to think, and to plan. Astrid knew that she couldn't escape on her own. She needed help, and she needed a plan. She began to think about her past cases, the people she had helped, and the connections she had made. As she thought, Astrid heard footsteps approaching. The door to her cell creaked open, and the woman in the black hoodie entered, followed by two burly men. "It's time for your daily exercise," the woman said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You need to keep your body healthy, even if your mind is weak." Astrid was dragged out of her cell and taken to a small exercise room. The room was equipped with a few pieces of exercise equipment, and she was forced to work out under the watchful eyes of the two men. As she exercised, Astrid noticed something strange. One of the men seemed different, his eyes flicking towards her with a hint of recognition. Astrid's heart skipped a beat as she realized that the man might be someone she helped sometime in the past. She tried to keep her cool, not wanting to alert the woman or the other man. As the exercise session ended, Astrid was dragged back to her cell. But this time, she felt a sense of hope. She knew that she might have found an ally, someone who could help her escape. As she settled back into her cell, Astrid began to think about her next move. She knew that she had to be careful, that one wrong step could mean disaster. But Astrid, she had fresh hope. She was more than determined to escape, to bring down the cybercriminals and to continue her work as the digital Robinhood. As Astrid settled back into her cell, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. She had caught a glimpse of the man who looked like Chris. Chris was falsely accused of trying to sabotage one of the U.S. P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance planes in the U.S. Navy. All digital footprints pointed that it was done from his own control panel, but he kept pleading not guilty. That was when Astrid decided to take the matter up and prove Chris's innocence, since it seemed she was the only one in the country who believed him. She eventually found the exact culprits actually wanted to instigate a nuclear war between the United States of America and the Chinese government. by hacking and taking control of one of the US P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance planes patrolling over the South China Sea and ramming it onto a Chinese fighter jet. The US denied issuing such order, but the Chinese wouldn't hear any of it. Since it was done under Chris's watch, he had to take fall. Just before he was extradited to the Chinese for proper interrogation, Astrid Falls came through. Unfortunately, the real culprits went underground, waiting for the right time to strike again. Both the US and Chinese government are still looking for them. Astrid was convinced that other guy would most likely be Chris, and he was trying to send her a message. Astrid's mind began racing with possibilities. Was Chris working with the cybercriminals? Or was he trying to help her? And what about the woman in the black hoodie? What was her role in all of this? As she pondered these questions, she heard footsteps approaching. The door to her cell creaked open, and the woman in the black hoodie entered, followed by the two men. "It's time for your dinner," the woman said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I hope you're hungry." Astrid was handed a tray of food, and she began to eat, trying to ignore the woman's taunts. But as she ate, she noticed that one of the men was acting strangely. He kept glancing at her, and then quickly looking away. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized that the man was trying to communicate with her. She tried to keep her cool, not wanting to alert the woman or the other man. Once the dinner ended, she was dragged back to her cell. But this time, she felt a sense of hope. She knew that she had found an ally, someone who could help her escape. As she settled back into her cell, she began to think about her next move. She knew that she had to be careful, that one wrong step could mean disaster. Lost in thought, she heard a faint noise coming from the ventilation shaft. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The noise grew louder, and she realized that someone was crawling through the shaft. Suddenly, a figure dropped down from the shaft, landing softly on the floor. Astrid's eyes widened as she saw Chris standing in front of her, a mischievous grin on his face. "I'm here to get you out," Chris whispered higher, his eyes scanning the room. "But we have to be quick. The guards will be back soon." Astrid's heart leapt with excitement as she realized that she was finally going to escape. She followed Chris as he moved swiftly around the room, disabling the security cameras and alarms. As they worked, Astrid Falls couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for Chris. He was young and fearless, with a quick mind and a talent for hacking. Together, they made their way to the door, Chris working his magic on the lock. The door creaked open, and Astrid felt a rush of excitement as she saw the corridor stretching out before her. They moved swiftly through the corridors, avoiding the guards and security cameras. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized that they were getting close to freedom. But just as they reached the exit, she heard the sound of alarms blaring and footsteps pounding the corridors. The guards had been alerted, and they were closing in. Chris grabbed her hand, pulling her through the exit. They emerged into the cool night air, the city lights twinkling before them. They ran, their footsteps pounding the pavement. Astrid's heart was racing, her breath coming in gasps. But she didn't look back, didn't dare to look back. They finally reached Chris's getaway car, secretly covered with dry grass, a sleek black vehicle that sped away from the curb as soon as they were inside. Astrid collapsed back in her seat, her heart still racing. As they sped through the city, Astrid turned to Chris, a smile on her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He grinned, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Anytime, digital Robinhood," he said. "We make a pretty good team." Astrid's smile grew wider as she realized that she had found a new ally, a new partner in her quest for justice. Together, they would take on the cybercriminals and they would win. But as they sped through the city, she couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling persisted. Astrid's instincts were telling her that they were in danger, that the cybercriminals would stop at nothing to catch them. As they approached Chris's hideout, a nondescript building on the outskirts of the city, Astrid's anxiety grew. She knew that they had to be extra careful. But as they entered the building, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. They were safe, at least for the moment. Chris led her to a small room filled with computer equipment and monitors. "This is my hideout," Chris said, grinning. "I've been using it to track down the ghosts, the organized cybercriminals they met earlier." Her eyes widened as she took in the array of equipment. "This is impressive," she said. "You're a genius, Chris." Chris chuckled. "I try my best," he said, "but I couldn't have done it without your help. You're the one who's been taking down the ghosts." Astrid smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "We make a good team," she said. As they sat down at the computers, she noticed that Chris seemed nervous. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if he expected someone to burst in at any moment. "What's wrong?" she asked, noticing his unease. He hesitated before speaking. "I think we're being watched," he said. "I've been noticing strange activity on the computers. Someone's been tracking my movements." Astrid's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" she asked. He shook his head. "I don't know, but I think it's someone from the inside, someone who's been working with the ghosts." Astrid's eyes narrowed. "We need to find out who it is," she said, "and we need to take them down." Chris nodded in agreement. "I'm on it," he said, "but we need to be careful. We don't know who we're up against." As they began to investigate, Astrid couldn't shake off the feeling that they were in grave danger. She knew that they were taking a risk by going after the cybercriminals, but she was determined to see justice served. But as they delved deeper into the world of cybercrime, she began to realize that nothing was as it seemed. The line between good and evil were blurred, and she found herself questioning everyone's motives, even Chris's. As the night wore on, her doubts grew. Was Chris really on her side, or was he working against her? She didn't know what to believe anymore. And then, just as she was starting to lose trust in him, he made a discovery that changed everything. "I found the mole," Chris said, his eyes locked on the computer screen. "It's someone we least expect." Astrid's heart skipped a beat. "Who is it?" she asked. The digital Robinhood will return.